Hi everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the series I've been doing the past few days, comparing domestic violence to people who commit genocide. Just in general, doing a psych profile of what are these people like. I have finally figured out how to flip my video, so ta-da! My writing is hopefully legible. Fingers crossed that it actually works this time, and I think I figured it out. Anyways, so I'm gonna today start off. Well, I got some feedback regarding, is being anti-Zionist, anti-Netanyahu, being anti-Semitic, is it one and the same thing? And that rhetoric is used to silence people into saying like, oh, if you are anti-Israel, you're anti-Semitic and you're the problem. So let's delve deeper into that to kind of, again, nuance. Adult humans with an adult human brain and an adult human neurology can see nuance and gray area. It isn't as binary as you're either pro-Jewish people or anti-Jewish people. You can criticize the behaviors of a singular member of a population and not denounce the entire population. It's possible. We're going to get into that. But step 1, I will be talking about what's known as the hierarchical mindset. So, people who have cluster B personality types, which shockingly is around 20% of the population, statistically, have what's called a hierarchical mindset. It's essentially, I am more worthy of human rights than you are because of X, whatever your X is, right? It could be whatever labels you have. Sorry, my hands, I'm still figuring out how this mirror works. So, whatever the labels are. I am more important just like inherently. I'm not saying people have different skill sets, right? Like, yes, a plumber is important because they're able to fix plumbing compared to an electrician, compared to a doctor. They have different skill sets. People have different skill sets and we're different and all of it is valuable. But to say one person is more valuable than the other person inherently at birth, right? At birth based on gender. Men are more valuable than women. Age, old people, like religion, whatever religion, it doesn't matter. Like fill in the blanks, right? Nationality, race, skin tone, your language, your education status. Because I went to an Ivy League, what I have to say is more important than somebody who didn't. Like anybody who truly like I went to an Ivy League, but I don't think that I am more important or my voice is more important than other people's voice. Everybody's voice. Like to believe in human rights is to believe all humans deserve rights. If you think of if anybody's read George Orwell's Animal Farm, the last sentence is all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. That's the crux of it, right? That's when what are American ideals? What are democracy's ideals? That we're all as humans equal, right? And we expand that with time. It went from just being, equality among white men to equality among men. Then they included African American black men, because before black men were 3/4 considered human. And then in the late 60s or something, they included women. Then they included, so they keep including people to achieve this ideal of human equality. But historically, it's all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. So if anybody inherently believes in this hierarchical mindset that I am more valuable than you because of my gender or my whatever the label, it doesn't matter what the label is, right? They don't believe in your humanity, and if they do, it's still, you're not the same human as I am, right? You're 3/4 of a human. I, as a white man, am more human than black men. The historical context, right? But we know as a society that that's not accurate. So now going into, let's see, where am I? Yeah. How pervasive that mentality is. It's not just domestic violence and what's happening in Gaza right now. I have taken 3 different instances of time periods in 3 different parts of the world. So in the eastern space we have India, in the western space we have America, and in the Middle East area we have Israel. Time periods for the purposes of this discussion range from 1500s all the way to present day. That's a pretty large chunk, right? So let's go over it. So, India, we're going to talk about the British Raj, about 200 years. USA, two aspects: Native American cultures and history, enslaved black people. Israel, since the occupation of Israel and Palestine since the 1967 to present day, right? We went over the behavioral types 2-3 days ago, and let's now break that down. Abusers believe in domination and against like existence. They want to dominate. In India, when British Raj came over, first they're like, oh, we just want to trade. But did they just want to trade, or did they want like trade on their according to what they think is fair, not what's actually fair, right? On their terms, they want trade on their terms. They want free labor. They want you to pay taxes. They don't want to pay taxes. They don't want to take care of the populace. They didn't want equality. They wanted domination. What happened when so it's Eurocentric model, right? It's the Eurocentric model of domination. And we look at history, even in the Crusades, it was about domination. It wasn't about like existence. And as a society, we've been given this myth of like human domination. And that's a very Eurocentric myth, where it's like in the animal kingdom, God created man, took his rib off and made woman out of it. And you exist to dominate. You're the smartest creature, right? Like, because you can send man to moon or invent the wheel or have industrial revolution, you are more valuable than a chimpanzee, than a tree, than whatever, right? Fill in the blanks. And then, once you already have that hierarchical mindset that human is more valuable than nature, then you can apply that to anything. Among the humans, men are more valuable than women. Asians are more valuable than non-Asian, whatever, right? Like, it fill in the blanks. Versus a more native, like pre-Christianity, pre-Eurocentrism, right? Pre your domination industry, the whole settler colonial mindset. In Native American cultures, I will not use Western ideology, because really Western ideology is Native American ideology. We equate West to white people. It's not. White people came here from Europe. So it's Eurocentric. When you're talking about domination, it's a Eurocentric ideology. Native American cultures are supposed to coexist with nature. Historical Indian cultures, tribals in India, Maori culture, we coexist with nature, because when you look at Buddhism, like OG Hinduism, not their new age rebranded domination culture in like Hindu nationalism, right? Your OG Hinduism, your in the Vedas, and your Buddhism, it talks about coexistence. We are supposed to be able to coexist because humans are biologically wired to have empathy and compassion. And we have strayed away from our natural state of being, and then we call our disillusioned or manufactured state of being as being natural. And we're going to go delve deeper into that. But the idea that like domination is de facto, it's Eurocentric. It's this crusader mentality from the 1050 BC, AC, whatever, after Christ, that crusade started, where it was all about domination, it's all about acquiring land. And like, does it, like, think of it from a long term, we are a blip on the timeline of space and time. We are just dust floating on a floating rock hurtling through space. Does it matter how much land I own and how much money I own? When you die, the money disappears, your land disappears, you return back into the ether, right? So why do we give a shit about how much money I own and how much land I own and how I'm able to dominate over other sentient beings, whether it's other humans, other life forms, nature? There's a reason why climate change and people don't give a shit about the environment, because we don't think we are the environment. We think, I deserve money and I will exploit the earth to get all the money in the world. But long term, if the earth dies, your genetic lineage dies with it. So it's like this very like short term mentality of my life is when I live till the day I die, and and that's all I care about, versus life you're not the center of existence, right? Europe isn't the center of existence. Man is not the center of existence. So, going back to this domination mindset, right, and entitlement, because they don't believe the other person is human and deserves human rights, right? When Europeans came to the US in the 1620s, on Mayflower, they were all like, oh, boo us, we don't know America, we don't understand how America, right, like the native land, really it's like the First Nations land. They're like, we don't know how to farm, we don't know how to fish, please help us. And the Native Americans did. They taught them. They wanted to coexist. Europeans didn't. They didn't want to coexist. They wanted domination. Bringing enslaved people to the US. Again, they don't value human life, right? It's like the entitlement. I deserve cheap labor. And dehumanization. Black societies and cultures in Africa, even though they're like this, European culture is more valuable than South African culture, and hence they are barbarians, and it's okay then to enslave them and bring them to our newfound land that we discovered. You didn't discover jack shit. It existed. You decided to come here. You decided to take over the land, and you brought like African enslaved people to the US to work for you for free, right? Like, it's not, and it's like, oh, but we deserve, it's like this high level of entitlement. When you look at Israel, sorry, I'm figuring out how this mirror works. Israel, same thing. Palestinians invited them over saying, hey, you guys don't have a space, we saw you experience Holocaust, come on over, let's coexist. What did they do? They kept encroaching and encroaching and encroaching and encroaching and encroaching, having illegal settlements, because they think they are more important than Palestinian people. And they look at history. So we're supposed to look at history to learn from our mistakes and stop doing that in the future. What abusers do, they look at the history not to learn from it, to then somehow twist it to justify their current atrocities. It's like decades ago, I experienced Holocaust, so now I have the right to... No, experiencing abuse doesn't give you the right to abuse more people. It doesn't. Experiencing abuse does not give you the right to abuse more people. It doesn't. So, just because you experience the Holocaust, which you shouldn't, that's not okay at all. No one's saying that's okay. But that doesn't justify continued abuse, continued violence. It doesn't. If anything, it teaches you violence is never the solution. It's never the solution. It just perpetrates the cycle of violence, right? Then what are our next issues? Refusal to take any responsibility, right? When the Britishers came over, even they left the country, but did they, do any reparations till date? Nope. Does America do any reparations for enslaved people? Nope. Do they begrudgingly set up, what are they called? Encampments? Not even encampments. In the US, they are like federal land that's given to Native Americans, but it's like a desert where you can't really do anything, right? They do it begrudgingly, but they kind of hide the past. They're like, oh, no, America's a great nation. We don't have a history of settler colonialism, but we do. Same thing with Israel, right? Lies. We went over this. Israel inundates propaganda and lies about the history of Israel, where they were not in Palestine. They came there, they took over, and now it's like, this is our country. We deserve to live here, right? Alright, sheer resources. When Britishers came to India, they had guns, they had a lot of ammunition, and they used it against our ancestors. I'm of Indian heritage. Same thing with native and enslaved African people. They used their guns, and technology. There's nothing wrong with development of technology. It's for defense purposes. Nobody was attacking them. They claim victimhood, saying, oh, but look at the savages. We must use our guns and our ammunition. When the British were Indians attacking Britain? Nope. They justify it by saying things like, "Oh, those are savages. I have no other option but to enslave people, bring them over to the US and force labor for free, enslavement," right? Same thing in India, that we had Britishers had, what's the term, like, I forget, it's not really, I can't, term skipping me, but indentured servitude, right? That's the problem. Like, this idea that based on your caste, based on where you were born, based on the religion you speak, or the language you speak, or the religious affiliation, you are inherently less valuable than me, and hence I have the right to set up indentured servitude, take you to a different country, force you onto a ship, take you to a different country, and force you to work in, like, cotton fields. Like, the entitlement of it, and using your power, right? Using your resources, not for peace, not for, equality, but for domination. We went over the propaganda aspect. They want control, and they care about the image management, right? This is why, if you look at British history books, they talk about India like, "Oh, it's a blip in the history. We never did anything there. What are you talking about?" In India, in, what was it? Sometime in the I think 18 something, when the whole Mangal Pandey revolution happened, we call it India's first act of independence. Britishers call it the Sepoy Mutiny, because it was mutiny for them. For us, it was about independence. It's about the right to self-determination. All my followers who are of Indian descent or live in India, we are not that far removed from a world where we were subjected to a British Raj. It's 3 generations ago. Talk to your grandparents. They were probably born under British Raj. They did not have the right to self-determination. And that's one of the basic human rights. Basic human rights is the right to self-determination. Native Americans didn't have it. Enslaved Africans didn't have it. Indians who were subjected to the British Raj didn't have it. Palestine doesn't have it. In the domestic work space, women and children don't have it. They don't have the right to self-determination. They need their husbands' permission to exist, to breed, to own property, to pay rent, to live in their house, to have a job. It's the basic idea that I must dominate, I must have control, and I care about power and control dynamics and public perception. They need to own history, right? That's what's key among them. Now, talking about, like, whether or not being anti-Zionist is being anti-Semitic, let's talk about that, right? So, in the past few years, when Trump was elected to be president of the United States, there were some members of the society who would say, "Oh, if you criticize Trump and his behaviors and his policy, you are anti-America." Again, going back to yesterday, we take the labels and we assign character versus looking at the character and assigning the label. Just because this person is a president, did Trump really capture American values, at least on paper, right? Like, what are American values on paper in our constitution? Even in Indian values, so we are a secular country. We're supposed to be secular. It's a democracy. We care about human rights. We care about liberty and freedom for all. The American dream of, I just want to, like, everybody has the right to the pursuit of happiness, right? Liberty and justice for everyone. But it's again the George Orwellian theme of all animals are equal, some are more equal than others. That's the reality of it. I would like to see the glass half full, in the sense that they are Americans who still believe in the OG idea of what this country, what our founders had in mind when they wrote our constitution, right? America is great in its idealism. And India, quite frankly, also, our constitution is based on American constitution. For the most part, like, the concept of democracy, of voting, is so key and critical, because it gives voting rights to all humans who are adults, right? But the implementation of it, in America, we look at gerrymandering, right? We try to still restrict somehow. Yes, we all have equal voting rights, but if you lived in this zip code, your voting, your votes aren't as valuable as if you lived in this other zip code. So again, going back to this concept of, like, we can criticize the behavior without being labeled as being anti. So like people would say you hate America if you hate Trump. But that's not true, because Trump did not encompass American values. Trump didn't care about equality, about justice for all, about the right to raise your family in peace. He only cared about himself. It's very apparent that he's a narcissist, right? The same thing goes to India. Like when people criticize Modi, they're like, oh, you are anti-Hindu and you're anti-India. Modi is a known Hindu nationalist. He supports them, actively so. Blatantly, doesn't even cover it up. It's not about like, nobody's persecuting Hindus in India. We are 80% of the population. At no point of time are Hindus in India ever going to be subjected to like, oh, but our temples and like, come on, man. Like, look at the reality. Who is the aggressor? Who has it's confusing who the aggressor is. The basic things, right? Who wants domination? Who has the most resources? Who is using those resources for evil, for not equality? It's okay to have resources, it's okay to have power, but are you using that power to maintain the power, or you're using the power to find equality? Like that's the crux of it. So it's okay to, and it's appropriate. In fact, it's your moral duty to criticize abusive people, whether it's your abusive husband, whether it's a dictator, whether, like, that's what Indians did. We fought against the British Raj. We were considered traitors, right? We call, Hamas terrorists. I'm not saying violence is the key. Violence is never the key or the solution. But like, to some people, it's a terrorist. For some other people, they're freedom fighters. Bhagat Singh was a terrorist for Britishers. He terrorized them. And the Britishers are like, oh, poor us. We are the real victims. Look, Bhagat Singh has bombs. Look at the broader perspective. Who had the most money? Who was the one, going for domination? Who was defending themselves? There's a reason why Gandhi and MLK Jr. voice for a non-violent movement. Because you can't use the oppressor's tools to fight the oppression. And there's this myth of having a perfect victim. That, okay, we have a justice system, but only certain victims deserve justice. If you're the perfect victim. This is why when crimes are conducted, like rape happens, it's always like, oh, but what was she wearing? Was she drunk? Does she have boyfriends in general? Right? Like, it's always the victim somehow, like, is she the perfect victim? If she is this pure angel and she was raped by a masked stranger in the back alley, then she deserves justice. But if the rapist was her husband, then it's like, oh, but she chose to marry him. Too bad. It's her choice. Which is why when MLK Jr. and Gandhi said we need a non-violent movement, it was like, you need to maintain the appearances that you are the perfect victim, so that society can be like, oh, it's obvious who the aggressor is and who the victim is. As a victim, you're not supposed to retaliate. You're not supposed to, retaliate. Like, you can't just take it. Sit there and get beaten up and get, trampled over, so then the world can see who the victim is. Because if you stand up, if you become a Bhagat Singh, if you try to voice for your rights in a violent manner, then it's like, oh, I don't know. Hamas, Israel, we have no idea. Hamas is this tiny, like this. They don't have nuclear level armaments. They're not like the number 3 most armed military power in the world. They're not. Yet it's like, oh, but they exist. Imagine if we lived in a world where, Indians by and large were like, oh, all Indians are terrorists because Bhagat Singh exists. You would think, we would still, till date, we would still be under British Raj. Like, that's the key and the crux of it. It is okay to criticize leaders who aren't doing their job of leadership. Trump is not a leader because he doesn't care about Americans. Modi is not a leader because he doesn't care about Indians. He cares about Hindus. Not even Hindus. Specific caste of Hindus. Right? Not even like, they still believe in even among Hindus, some Hindus are more important than other Hindus. Because of your caste. Or your gender. Or your whatever. the basic concept, our native history, our native cultures, our tribal cultures, before colonialism and the settler mentality ever existed, we are supposed to coexist among humans, among all sentient beings, among the snail, the tree, the concept of I must dominate is what has caused all suffering, all of human suffering, what has caused, environmental crisis. It's what has caused social justice issues. It's what has caused violence against women and children. The concept of I must dominate. And from a neuroscience perspective, I might have to end this shortly. So from a neuroscience perspective, again, I have created a YouTube series kind of delving down into the reconnecting humanity. If you see images of mass terror against other humans and you in your body don't feel your heart racing, your hands getting sweaty, if you don't feel moved, it's not just like, oh, in my head I cognitively see this is a bad thing. It's a visceral feeling. I need to do something, right? I can't just sit there and watch. Like if I'm, in the middle of a road and I see a car crash, I'm just not just sitting like, oh, I see a car crash. It's like I'm so far removed from it, right? Versus I see blood, somebody is bleeding. I feel compelled. I must call 911. I must pick this person up, take them to the hospital, do something. If you don't feel that natural feeling to end human suffering, even if you're not the one who's bleeding, that's a neurological issue. And that will be dealt with in my YouTube series. So please join me on my YouTube series. I'm going to end this over here. Again, this was part 3 of my ongoing series of just discussing how common abuser behaviors are. It's the same behavioral patterns, the same psychological profile, whether it's a dictator, whether it's the British Raj, whether it's settler colonials who came here and took away land from Native Americans, whether it's Eurocentric people who bought or enslaved African people and brought them to this country for free labor, whether it's Israel pushing on their genocide, whether it's your terrible boyfriend or your husband who is trying to dominate your life and think you exist to serve them. You don't exist as a human person, you exist to serve them, and the second you're not of service anymore, you are not valuable. So that's because all of these people are disconnected from their humanity, and the only way forward is in a non-violent nature is to reconnect with your humanity, use empathy and compassion to solve problems. We can only talk our way through problems and not use violence when we can connect with our inner emotions, have the entire emotional range of human existence, of human experience, and then use that to develop compassion for all sentient beings, and then engage in problem-solving behaviors versus using domination and violence to solve our issues. Using domination and violence to solve our issues is extremely barbaric and antiquated. And we as a society need to make a conscious decision that we choose not to engage in oppressor, settler colonial behaviors anymore. We are making a conscious choice to evolve into our OG, what our DNA says we are, which is empathetic, compassionate creatures. Thank you for joining me. Please find me on my YouTube series. If you have any questions, feel free to put them on the comments. And I'm so happy I was able to figure out how to flip the video. So now you guys can read everything that I'm writing. Yay! Alright, thanks guys. Bye.